we can see everything through any specific thing. Like we don't need to be working on everything all at once. If we look at any specific thing deeply, we can see all the things. We are looking to deepen our sexual wellness or expression. We're actually working on everything. We're looking at drinking that cup of coffee. We're actually looking at everything. So we don't need to be focusing on everything all at the same time as long as we take time for something.
I'm Rachel, and you're listening to the Owning Your Sexual Self podcast. Okay, hello everyone. Welcome back for another episode of Owning Your Sexual Self. We have all the way from New York, Devin Scott on with us today, also a social worker. So exciting. Thank you so much for coming onto the show today.
Well, I'm so happy that you had me today, Rachel.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you are the founder of Find Your Meaning. That means to explore like how to stop playing the game. I like the we're using the air quotes around that, both in the ancient spiritual sense and in the modern social one. And so you've been working with this game. It's an Indian board game, from what I understand. Like, can you tell us a little bit, like what is this thing?
Yeah, Leela, it's the philosophy in old yogic tradition that life is a cosmic game, that our highest consciousness that we all kind of share just started playing and creating, and we're one of those manifestations. And all of this is just kind of for us to experience what we created. So if we're
Mhm.
building a sandbox, we're like in it, we're getting this wealth of emotions. At the highest level, there's like one emotion, bliss, and then when we decided to kind of make this game, we made thousands of emotions for real richness of experience.
Mhm.
And there might be rules to the game, but there's not necessarily a point to the game because at some level we're already perfect. And so we're just put into this really deep experience.
Mhm.
And it comes back to this nature of like, it's meant to be played, it's meant to have its ups and downs, it's meant to be rich and uh, fun might be uh, uh, non-nuanced way to think about it,
Mhm.
but to be enjoyed for the diversity of experience and allow all of it in.
Yeah. And
Um,
so is it like okay, are you speaking to it of like basically Leela's life, like life is the game, or is this like an actual game? Like this is like a board game that you sit down and play?
it's both.
Okay, okay. I was like, wait, did I totally get the wrong message here when I said let's record?
Yeah,
So
no. So it is a philosophy, but then there are versions of this put into a board game. And there's one version of it that's most famous, but there are a lot of different versions of the board. There's even some that had translations into Islamic faith and brought in Islamic principles. And probably most people listening will be familiar with the board itself because it was the inspiration for Chutes and Ladders.
okay, okay. Yeah, because I was
Uh,
thinking, I was like, is this like the game of life? Are we talking Monopoly? Like what's going on? So shoots and ladders, that makes sense.
yeah, so if you imagine Chutes and Ladders and you have 8 rows, and each row is like one of the kind of metaphysical layers of our consciousness, from like root chakra physical being at the bottom to divine at the very top.
Mhm.
And it's a mapping of these yogic beliefs around our states of consciousness. So each square is a state of consciousness layered into those like realms of consciousness.
Mhm.
And then there are snakes that come up at like higher thinking planes that are dragging you back down into lower brain thinking. So like if you think of the first row as brainstem and some limbic areas, it's when fear is disturbing your thoughts at a higher level and it's actually coming down to a lower brain level.
Mm.
And then you have arrows, which would be the ladders in Chutes and Ladders, which are virtues. So something like forgiveness or mercy is so divine that for a moment you get to see something much deeper. And
Mm.
so you move to a different level of consciousness just by nature of allowing mercy.
Mhm.
Um, and the rules of Leela are that you enter into the game and then you leave by returning to higher consciousness.
Mhm.
But it's not necessarily like a game to win, it's a game to explore. So
Mm.
you're going to go
Mhm.
up and down and up and down. It's going to feel really frustrating. It's often going to feel like life because every square is something like anger or nihilism or violence.
Mhm.
And you're thinking about your life and you're thinking about how is this showing up in my experience and why is it showing up in my experience? What is the meaning I'm meant to take from this? How is this deepening me? How can it soften me? How can it grow me?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
and
So you're like, yeah, it's really tapping into the introspection for people and getting people to think on a much different level than just, the day-to-day like hustle and bustle that we go through. I think so often we're not in that like grounded state of mind, but it's until we play maybe something like this or have these sort of thoughts to come back like, okay, let me get back into my body. Like what is present? I love I lead a weekly group call, and so every morning I think I'm like, okay, what am I called in to share about today? So something we've had like meditations on patience and forgiveness. And so I'm like giving them this very niche thing, like, okay, just as you said, like, where can we show more forgiveness in life right now, whether that be for self or somebody else? Um, yeah, and I love that. That's like those are your essentially like leveling up in life, leveling up in your experience as a human that you get to have.
yeah, and you're just always being in a circular area of deepening yourself, of being shown signs, of being shown synchronicities.
Hmm.
So when people play, they come up with a question and then they roll into the game, and it's a way to explore that question. I think it's best played in groups, like in your group, because people, at least nowadays, are often trying to do it all in silence and in isolation. And it can be healing just seeing that other people are hitting the same square and having the same frustration.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Like I'm not the only one over here on like Lonely Island dealing with this thing. It might not look the same as somebody else's experience, but I think yeah, that is such a huge part of healing is knowing that you're not alone, you're not the only one, and you're not broken essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have a background in like body-based coaching, you're a psychotherapist, as I mentioned, also a social worker. Tell me a little bit about your journey in life. Like what even led you to discovering this thing?
I think, like most people who got to this space, it was classic wounded healer by shit, where I was a very wounded person myself,
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
flailing around trying to get myself into a state where I could love myself and embrace my pleasure and live my values instead of kind of what was put on me. And I was really into meditation spaces, I was really into yoga spaces, and the more I kind of put my feet into coaching and teaching, the more people were like, please do more of this, please do more of this.
Mm,
And then I hit body work and I had the same thing. Body work changed me, and then I started doing body work and I kept getting those same messages. And I feel like in some ways it just found me, and it's still finding me as I change up my work.
hmm
Um,
hmm
but it wasn't necessarily an intention in the beginning so much as just kept following the little signs of what was
hmm
feeling right.
hmm Yeah, gosh, if we could only all do that, more of that, like following, going where the pleasure leads you to, going where joy leads you to, happy leads you to, and I think also a piece of this is like not having to know or not even like creating expectations around the what's next for us. It's just trusting, like taking that leap of faith, essentially, like whatever is meant for me is going to be, and I might not get like how that journey, I might want the journey to look a certain way, but. Yes, similar last couple years for me have also been quite deep in the healing journey and figuring out life, if you will. Um, and it's not pretty at times. It can fucking sucks at times, in fact.
I know it can get so bad.
Yeah, but there's light at the end of the tunnel, we promise. Yeah.
Meaning there's always light in the darkness, right?
hmm Yeah,
It's hard to see.
absolutely. Absolutely. So you just from looking at your profile and some in other things too, like do you work primarily or a lot, let's say with the LGBTQ population?
Most of my clients are LGBT, and when I trained in psychotherapy, it was in LGBT affirmative care.
Awesome.
Um, but then I think you might experience this too. I feel like attracts like, so I end up bringing in clients outside of the LGBT community with circumstances I'm familiar with. Like one thing that comes to me a lot is familial sexual violence, a
hmm
history of that in their childhood, and usually not in the LGBT community.
hmm Yeah. And so when you're working with these people, what are some of these other patterns that you're seeing coming up with your clients?
So I think a lot of what I work with ends up boiling down to shame and its many manifestations.
hmm
That can be internalized homophobia, that can be a personality adaptation to say, I deserve all the bad things that have happened to me.
Yeah.
or the basic shame adaptation of I need to become a version of myself that can be loved and acceptable because I am so fundamentally broken.
Hmm.
And a lot of my clients have kind of like a rock and a hard place form of shame where they have this one version of shame coming from kind of culture at large, where they have a sense of conformity to the pictures that's been painted on TV or through religion. In the LGBT community, this is often shame around their sexuality at all, shame around engaging in anything at all.
Hmm.
And then if they're in a minority space, sometimes there's a secondary culture that's also creating a bubble of shame. And with especially my male LGBT clients, gay men in particular, there's often a pressure for a lot more sexuality or polyamory or like group sex, things like that, which can be really empowering. But when they're feeling this pull between the two of them, of one, all of your sex is bad, and the other is you're not an evolved person unless you're engaging in these specific practices, it
Hmm.
can be really hard to find themselves because now they're being tugged in two directions, and shame is pulling them in two directions. And they might sit anywhere in that spectrum.
Hmm. Hmm.
But
Yeah.
depending on which space they're in, it's hard to think through that.
Hmm. Yeah. So that's gets us into this concept that you refer to as queer perfectionism, like the needing to get it right. And then yeah, there's like this two different worlds that they're coming from, like two different messaging that they're receiving of like essentially how it's supposed to look. Um, that I can imagine that can be extremely difficult for people to navigate through.
Yeah, so if they internalize this kind of root belief that I can't be loved, or if it has the religious trauma that who I am will send me to eternal damnation, there's such a strong pull to become a version of yourself that will be acceptable in any space.
Hmm.
And in those two spaces, it's like all of a sudden two versions of yourself are coming up, and neither are actually authentic, in full at least. And
Hmm.
it's really hard to have a version of yourself that can persist. And even the most authentic person, they change in an environment, but they're
Hmm.
being pulled in these two directions, and it's normally tearing people apart.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, can you speak to just a little bit too of like how the like this constantly striving for that external validation, whether it be from family, community, or even the queer spaces, how does that impact our nervous system and just one's overall sense of self?
Well, it really depends on the nervous system. Some people have like a dissociative pattern in their nervous system. They're more chronically and dorsal, and so they're like hardly feeling anything at all. And others are a constant fume of cortisol, more in a sympathetic state, just do, do,
Hmm.
do, 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 do. And you can see both of them, like the low mood or the kind of frantic, manic mood on their nervous system. So the nervous system, I feel like I end up working more with on people with developmental trauma. Whereas the queerness with if there wasn't the development trauma in the first place, or if they came to the realization later, I normally see more limbic brain activation or like second chakra activation, which is the personality adaptation, the shame.
Hmm.
The nervous system isn't wildly dysregulated, but their sense of self is collapsed. Their core identity formation years were disturbed,
Hmm.
and so they might have no concept of what they like. They might have no concept of even like where they want to eat or what their core values are. They just started kind of piecemealing together a life of desires based on what everyone else said. And usually when they come to work, they can't name what's wrong, but it just doesn't feel right.
Hmm.
There's like a hollowness. They're doing the things, but it's just nothing really feels truly satisfying.
Hmm. Yeah. What do you have, maybe like some mindfulness or even body-based awareness that could help somebody notice when maybe they're performing instead of just being?
So one exercise I do with every client at some point is
Mhm.
embodied consent. It's a Stacey Haynes practice,
Mhm.
which is like putting your hands out and standing up and getting really firm, taking the time in your body and going, no. And sometimes you can pair it with like pushing against a pillow and if you're in person, and
Mhm.
then like doing the opposite, going yes with like the hands in and
Mhm.
going maybe with the hands kind of side and just taking time to even understand what it means in their body to
Mhm.
want something,
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
to say no to something. Because especially it depends on the person, but some people have never experienced no.
Yeah.
That pushing against a pillow can be just so empowering, and an embodied no can be sometimes more beautiful than an embodied yes. But
Oh
then a
yeah.
lot of people come to say yes, and they realize their body floods with fear,
Hmm. Hmm.
um, and they have no language for distinguishing these things. That fear can just feel like excitement. That fear can feel like passion, but it's not necessarily the yes they're looking for.
Hmm.
And so I think looking at that, just what does yes, what does no look like in the body
Yeah.
is a really good place to start. And a lot of my clients, I work on pleasure outside of sex first. So, like, how deeply can you drink a cup of coffee?
Hmm. Hmm.
Can you hold this pillow and feel its touch? Can you smell this aroma? Because I often find if you ask, this prompt can sound ridiculous sometimes, but somatically, I think it works. Is like, can you feel this in your spine?
Hmm.
Is it going through your whole sensory system? And a lot of people find that they like really can't, or they just immediately start to dissociate the idea of receiving at all,
Hmm.
even if it's a cup of coffee, is threatening in some way.
Yeah. That is, you are my fourth podcast interview this week. And I'm not kidding. Every single person, this conversation around pleasure outside of the space of sexuality and bringing more pleasure into our life. And it's been four different topics that I'm recording with people on. But it's just like, I feel like it's like, okay, universe, like I get the message. Like I'm hearing you. Like it's wild to me that everything keeps coming back to, it's like, how can we source our pleasure more? Like how can we stir up this more? How can we let this literally years ago I did an episode with somebody, the title of it is How to Live a Pleasure-Led Life. And she is a woman that came on and she was literally somebody that just like drips in pleasure. Like you if you watch her, if you hear her, like you just know, like she just gives off the vibe. But in that episode, similar things. And I think it's so important. It's like even just I'll use the 2%. It's like how can we increase this just 2%? How can I make this more enjoyable, more pleasurable, just 2% more? Like last night, and again, this has been like very on my mind this week. So my husband and I were carving pumpkins last night. It's almost Halloween here at the time of we're recording. And I was like, okay, we could just carve pumpkins. But I was like, no, let's like turn on some Halloween music. Let's dim the lights a little bit. Like, and we had so much fun like dancing around the kitchen, like to this spooky, like weird ass Halloween music while we're carving our pumpkins, made our pumpkin seeds. Like that could like I that's like example of the 2%. Like how that and that was such a more meaningful experience for us than just the carving of the pumpkins, which again, I think it's I like to give that example because it just feels it's just real life shit. We're not saying you have to spend a lot of time doing this stuff. It can just be these small tweaks that people could make for themselves.
Well, it just made me think like the 2% increase sometimes falls under like a socially stigmatized way of being. Like,
Hmm.
I went to a Broadway show yesterday because I have a friend in town, and there were teenagers behind us, and they were loud, but their loudness, I think, was creating such joy for them.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking to myself, like, I'm getting angry, but I'm also not permissioning myself to fully experience this. I'm telling myself I have to enjoy this show perfectly in silence in this internal way. And there's someone behind me embodying their way different, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
projecting out on them, but like that's their 2%. And I have ways of blocking my 2% because society says all your pleasure has to be quiet. All your pleasure has to be
Mm-hmm.
non-disturbing. Not silly, not with the music, not
Mm-hmm.
dancing on the subway, not color in New York because we all wear black all the time.
Oh, that's funny. No, yeah, like yeah, I love that adding more color to your life. And I think also just speaking of that, like the way that we dress, like that is another way of us tapping into our creativity and our expression and joy and pleasure and all of that. It's like, yeah, if I'm wearing like an itchy sweater all day versus I have like something soft, cozy, like weighted a little bit, yeah, I'm gonna feel so much better. My outlook on that day, probably my performance of that day is gonna be so much better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had written something down and thinking about this podcast, which was I have a lot of clients right now who are feeling a lot of shame in this period of time about having pleasure at all because they're witnessing so much suffering.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think they're struggling with this ascetic level of shame of like the only pure way to experience suffering is to have no pleasure and sit in suffering. And I'm seeing that around this 2% too, or in sex. Like, is it okay for me to be like out enjoying sex right now and not just suffering?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and I keep coming back to this idea of like and there's something about this in Leela too. We need a certain amount of pleasure to resource ourselves to examine the pain.
Hmm.
Like, and in this moment where there's like so much suffering to be had, we can't look at it honestly. We can't introspect. We can't deepen ourselves. We can't resolve it if we're not resourcing ourselves with pleasure. And
Hmm.
maybe we need more than the 2%. Maybe hold the full plate, hold it all, and look at it all together. We need so much pleasure too right now.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, and that's like you're saying, like Leela can really serve as this metaphor of moving beyond the roles, moving beyond the expectations, the identities, all of this. And I think, yeah, I think just I'm glad that you brought that in. Just the world that we're living in right now, there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear that's happening for different communities and groups of people. And yeah, I would say that has been a theme of my client base as well as of this year, really of like what yeah it almost feels like selfish if I'm accessing pleasure, choosing pleasure for myself because the world around me is a dumpster fire essentially is these people's like way of thinking.
Yeah. And I had this mindfulness teacher that I like really look up to, and she always teaches about like sharing the plate. She
Mm.
teaches a lot of children, so all her metaphors are always gorgeous. Jamie Lanterera, if anyone wants to look her up. Um, Around just like you can have anger on your plate and joy, and you can hold them together.
Hmm.
And actually they can build on each other and like support each other. And we don't need to be looking at one at the same time. And it's okay if your body is both in irritation and in pleasure.
Hmm.
Um, and I think this is normally something that we don't, at least in the US, get actively taught in childhood.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like you're only one thing. Like where are you at in the smiley face spectrum today? Where do you land? It's like can I circle all of them? I think this reminds me of what previously I've done work specifically with survivors of sexual assault and sexual abuse and bringing a therapeutic form of art for them. And so that's I think a nice example of what you're saying here. It's like they're in their anger, but they're using so we would have them paint pictures of their healing, of their trauma as a way of expressing and moving through it. And so I can just imagine that experience. It's like I'm feeling anger, but I'm doing this activity that brings me joy. And like that, I think that's in my current practice. Like I often am having people like draw pictures of their vulva or their body or like what it feels like, safety, freedom, like what does that look like how do you express that? And so yeah, we're human, right? We're multifaceted beings. We are allowed to experience a duality of emotions.
Yeah, that's how we get things like caustic and dry humor, right?
Hmm.
Have to sit with it and laugh at the same time.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you, yeah, so much. This has been a really good conversation. What would you say? Let's see. If yeah, I'm like, where do I want to go next with this? First, I want to ask on the game. How can somebody find this game? Is there a website? Like, if somebody wants to purchase the actual game of Leela, how would they find it?
So I would say follow me. If you go
Okay.
to my website, findyourmeaning.coach, one of my best friends and I are working on a translation loosely. We're trying to create bridge language into Western psychology and anatomy to
Hmm.
make these old concepts understandable. And we're probably going to launch a Kickstarter next year.
Okay, awesome.
But if you go on like Amazon, there is like a very yogic philosophical book that they could purchase with a simple board. I did like a 40-hour in-person training on all the squares to dive
Wow,
deeper
yeah.
because that book is not easy to understand without it. But
Hmm.
follow us if you're interested, and we'll launch something next year that we're hoping is a bit more accessible, more journaling prompts, more. We're working on an oracle deck if someone likes tarot. For
Yeah.
that group, I want to shuffle and pick one theme for today, kind of
Hmm. Hmm.
situation.
Yeah. Wonderful. And so you're blending this then with the body-based coaching. So it's like a nice mixture of what you're offering to people at this time.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I like that too. It's like the embodiment, embodying fear, embodying resistance. Like, how does my body want to move if I'm feeling resistance? I just, again, this morning's group call, it was like, okay, so you're feeling resistance to this thing. Like, do you want to throw a temper tantrum? Like, do you want to stick your tongue out right now? Do you want to stomp your feet? Do you want to be like, no, I don't like this is stupid? It's like allow yourself to do that. Like, allow it to look messy and weird and awkward.
Totally agree. I also love like sensory motor, like can you move in and out of that posture? Do you notice that your body has the capacity to choose? Um, Even I was doing something last night and I was thinking, oh, I could say this in nonviolent communication, but my body wants a tantrum. How can I honor that enough?
Yeah. It's like all of my clinical skills are out the window. Like, do you get like human Rachel or do you want therapist Rachel right now? Because it feels very different. Yes, yes, yes. Well, yeah, so you have some things coming kind of down the pipe. What would you say for you? Like what has Leela really shown you? Like how has this been good in your personal development?
I think so. I first got exposed to it like 4 years ago, and then I did my training a year and a half ago, and it just fundamentally shifted the way I look at life development.
Hmm.
I think, particularly in the West, we can have this idea that like just linear growth towards something of ascension, or
Hmm.
like always moving forward, positive something. And the nature of just the ups and downs of Leela and it all having value, it just kept softening me and kept increasing my uncertainty about literally everything in the world.
Hmm.
Um, and so like while I might have my like fit when something bad happens to me, I have a week of like self-pity or something like that. I'll come back to the idea of the board of like, okay, there's something being activated in me. This is a teacher. It's
Hmm.
coming to me in synchronicity. There's guidance in this. There's wisdom in this. Is there a way I can take it to look at myself in a deeper way? If nothing is good and nothing is bad and everything is coming with meaning, what is my meaning?
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think that just shook me, like
Hmm.
in a beautiful way. It shook the way I work with clients. Now I look around and I'm like, oh, that's square 68. Like I always seeing it through these like, oh, the universe is communicating this, or like this is like, man, I fundamentally now see anger as just as valuable as joy because it just gave me this language of interpreting everything as meaning.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I think that can be a beautiful reminder to people too. It's like even though you're going through this hailstorm or whatever is happening to you in life, it's like you might not get to it right away. Like I think again, it's like embodying, like allow yourself to feel into the feels and not push it down. Like if it's anger, if it's rage, if it's whatever, I think it's equally as important to move through that. But when it gets to a place where it feels right, like you can bring in some awareness or some introspection or go deeper into it. Um, yeah, I think that is super helpful. Instead of just moving on to the next thing, it's like asking, okay, let me pause a little bit. Like, and I know somebody's going to be listening, like, Rachel, you don't need to unpack everything. You don't need to process everything. That's not what I'm saying. But yeah, it's like, how do you want to move through life? Like, how do you want to grow through this? Like, how do you want to feel through this? How do you want to intensify, I guess, your human experience here? Again, is in the spiritual world, right? Like, we're just a very small blip on the map, having our human experience. What do you want yours to look like at the end?
I also get like that with myself about the critique of we can't analyze everything. Because sometimes I get frustrated. I was like, this just can just be I fell. Like, or this can just be this.
Like, I'm just pissed right now, okay?
Yeah. I kind of think I have this belief though, we can see everything through any specific thing. Like we don't need to be working on everything all at once. If we look at any specific thing deeply, we can see all the things.
Hmm. Hmm.
If we are looking to deepen our sexual wellness or expression, we're actually working on everything.
Hmm.
We're looking at drinking that cup of coffee, we're actually looking at everything.
Hmm.
Um, so we don't need to be focusing on everything all at the same time as long as we take time for something.
Hmm. Yeah. I think it's, yeah, if we can just bring it back to pleasure again, whether it's inside the bedroom, outside the bedroom, letting that, like trying to bring that as your really like your North Star, essentially. Like, how can I bring more pleasure? How can I feel more pleasure in this experience, whether it be sexual or not?
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thank you so much. Yeah, how can people get in contact with you if they want to learn more or get your teachings?
So I have a website, findyourmeaning.coach. You can scroll to the bottom and sign up for a newsletter. I don't send one out very often, but that's probably the best way.
Mhm.
My socials are there, but I'm not very active because I haven't figured out a way to give myself pleasure and use social media. I'm working on it. But I'd say go to the website. You can schedule time with me if you're interested in working, but also I'll post meditations, blog posts, anything for learning.
Wonderful. And you said you're in Brooklyn area in New York?
Yep, Brooklyn
Cool.
Heights.
Okay, very cool. Well, thank you so much, Devin, for coming on the show today. It's been a really great pleasure to talk with you today.
You too, Rachel. I'm so grateful for you.
Thank you so much for listening to today's show. If you loved it, be sure to subscribe so that you never miss an episode. And if you really fucking loved it, make sure to tag me on social media at the Rachel Main. I'll see you next week.